Some of the older Radio Shack walkie-talkies operate better than the new ones. When I first started on my base station back in 1994, it was a mobile rig when my father had a TRC, I think 452 model back then. It was one of the ones that had a meter. It was like red light display and a magnet mount small antenna. Then I worked it up to one of my Cobras walkie-talkies when they came out for like $40. I think it was an H36 model back then. Then I got my base station in 1995 or 1996 when I was in homeschool. It was a TRC. I think it had a green light display. I think it was a TRC 452 it was, or 4 during that time. It was a newer one.
Yeah, the one I just trashed was the TRC 210.
Oh, that's an old one. You know, there's a site actually you can see every Radio Shack model from since the 30s on up to 2015. There's a site called radioshackcatalogs.com. Look it up. You can go through on PDF files or image files. It'll show you the whole entire catalogs for every year you can see.
Yeah, when I was listening to that Friendship Net tonight, there were a couple guys that were talking about some of the old Radio Shack amateur rigs that they used to manufacture and sell back in the 60s.
They probably were built better. That was before Citizen Band Radio came along. Because I remember, like, I looked up some stuff on the World Wide Web. They said CB radios used to be ham radios back in 1960s until the 70s when they started less regulating them.
Yeah, they totally deregulated in the early 90s. We no longer had to have a license.
That's 10-4 on that one, yeah. Yeah, it was like when they came out during like in 1996 when they got FRS and GMRS. But yeah, these radios came out for a long time. So my father's first radio when he got his base station, it was a Midland, the ones that came out in the 1976 models. It had like a 23 channel knob, and it was the only ones that would go for like $400 back then. Then my mom had a mobile rig back then. That's how they met each other over the CB back years ago, back in the late 70s.
Yeah, I understand that. Well, Radio Shack has been manufacturing radios for a long time, and you know, now that the FCC has deregulated CB, they've also deregulated the NURS. And there was an article that I read on the FCC website that they are discussing deregulating GMRS. FRS is already deregulated, but they're talking about deregulating GRMS.
But people can still talk on those channels still. They still have those radios. It doesn't matter, but they can still do it like that. Because in certain countries, they can still talk on those channels too, I heard.
Yeah, people use them all the time. They don't give a damn about buying a license. They use them anyway.
Yeah, because the last few weeks I've been on, I think about a month ago, you can actually hear a lot of kids over here in North Ogden, but it must be coming from at least 20 miles away, or they could be down in those areas down below me. I hear them a lot of them on Channel 1 and Channel 6. They also were on GMRS on the Channel 8 range. And it's probably these construction workers that let their children use these radios when they talk to each other. Mostly like 4-year-olds and 10-year-olds are talking on it in my area. I can hear them pretty quite good up here, and I get a full bars, but they're probably about 5 to 6, 8 miles away from where I'm at.
Yeah, I get them down here too. I do have one of those radios that has a scanner built into it that scans all the channels. But because of all the tracking that's going on, I've set my tone up where nobody's using it.
Oh, you have one of those scanners. I actually have one of those Union type scanners. It's a Bearcat. I actually got it from my grandpa back 5 to 10 years ago before he died. It actually is one from 2003, and it actually can scan all the frequencies up to 800 megahertz down to the lowest one. It even can scan CBs and police radio too. And it actually runs on AAA batteries on it. It's got an orange type display inside the LED.
Yeah, I've got a real lifting scanner that pretty much covers the whole gambit.
Oh, those Radio Shack ones. They were very popular back then during that time.
popular today. I was talking to the guy that runs the Radio Shack out there in Lincoln. He says he sells a lot of scanners.
Oh, 10-4. I know they got the Radio Shack down by 5 Points I've seen, and it's still open this day.
That one's closed. Closest Radio Shack we've got now is out in Lincoln.
I'll probably have to look that one up. Maybe I can get some parts from my other radios or something I can find more coax cable. But I usually get them pretty cheap on Amazon. They actually go really cheap for a 50-foot cable. Radio Shack still sells the coax cable. The company still exists this day. They sell it for around 20 bucks. I got it really cheap during about 2 months ago or about a month ago when I got a 50-foot coax, just like the original one they have.
Yeah, I'm thinking in the back of my mind that it's about 24.95, something like that.
Yeah, it's a 10-4 on that. Yeah, it's usually right around $24, and usually ships from all the way from Texas the way it is.
Okay, you're starting to produce a lot of static.
How about right there? Does that sound a little bit better?
10-4.
Yeah, it's actually the atmosphere conditions. That's what's going on here.
Yeah, I understand that.
Because my antenna is pretty quite low. It's only 18 foot off on a patio porch. That's what I have it on. And my my trim type antenna looks like it's the twin coil. It has those little coils that go around it, the silver. It's one of the cheapest antennas you get, but it can rate up to 37,000 watts. It's one of those trucker antennas, and I got it on one of those ground planes that actually put it together, which you can buy it for like $13 on Amazon. And usually a company who makes all this stuff is usually a company like Sailor's King, and also Blue Parrot Sales actually sells it too, down in Florida.
Yeah, believe it or not, I prefer to make my antennas if at all possible, rather than buy them. I'm in the process right now of doing a ground plane used with my Bofang.
Oh, okay, yeah, I understand. You're trying to build one of those Bofang base stations, which I actually have one of those mobile antennas that actually connects to one of those with a trim type antenna, a very short one. But yeah, the ground plane I got for this antenna here, I'm talking on the base station, it's actually all out of chrome metal. Very hard metal, that's what it is. It's got these white type, it's got like a four-way type ground plane, what it is.
Yeah, I'm familiar. The ones that I do, I usually make out of copper welding rod.
Thin type copper wire that actually uses an electric outlet type wire.
No, it's pig wire.
Oh, I know what that is. Mostly like farm animal stuff, like little rods and stuff. I know what you mean.
Yeah, you can get 3 foot lengths of it. Get a whole package of about 30 of them for $8 at Hardin Freight.
Yeah, I know where that is. Also, you got Tractor Supply down there near there too. Yeah, I know where Harbor Freight is. That's out by 5 Points down there.
That's permanent.
So, how long you have lived in your area? Have you lived there all your life here?
Well, I'm August, born and raised in August.
10-4, but have you been to other states in part of the United States, like Florida and the Deep South?
Only for work, or Navy. Most of the time I was in the Navy, I spent in California.
Oh, the San Diego area, okay. Yeah, my dad used to be in the Navy for 12 years. He was stationed when he started boot camp in Orlando, Florida. Then when he got on his first Navy ship back in 1984, 85, it was in Norfolk, Virginia. And also then we went back to South Florida again and headed down to Puerto Rico back in 86 and 87 all the way to 89. He was stationed out of Rosados Rose. Then my dad went over to, after that, during 1989, he went to station in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, the Marine base, but it's still operation with Navy stuff there during the time. Then we went down toward Mayport. I stayed there for several years, for at least for a year once. My dad was in Desert Shield and Desert Storm during the time. And after that, we went down to Homestead, got hit with Hurricane Andrew back in 1992. Then moved up to Hollywood, Florida for at least 5 years. Then I lived up in the Lake City area on a farm. Then went all the way up to head toward Utah, the way I live up here. The first place I actually lived in Utah when I first came here back in 2009 down in Clinton. Then we moved up to North Fogden after that during 2011. I've been here ever since.
Yeah, well, I've got my roots here in the Ogden area. Lived there forever and ever and ever, and now out here at Pleasant View, but it's still considered Ogden.
It's the 10-4. So you're down in the valleys, is that where you're at?
Affirmative.
But yeah, you guys don't get hardly have storms here. See, where I lived in Florida, we always get thunderstorms in the afternoon every time when the cold fronts come, or either way. Usually sometimes they produce tornadoes, but I've seen the thunderstorms, they don't last very long when they get over the lake sometimes. But mostly the thunderstorms usually come during August and September, but usually it's a rain event. I've seen quite worse stuff than that.
Yeah, well, the lake here has a drastic effect on the weather, plus the fact that we're surrounded by mountains.
Okay, yeah, it's 10-4 on that one, but yeah. Usually, the bad point down in Florida is usually hurricane season. Hurricanes hit anywhere in the coastline either way, but Florida does not have mountains. They have a little tiny hill type of mountain over there, like only 300 feet, over in the Panhandle, over near Marianna, Florida, over there, between Panama City and that area.
Okay, so I'm not familiar with Florida, so I really don't know anything about the weather patterns there.
Yeah, they actually have weather patterns. Usually North Florida actually has a winter type system. Usually they get cold. The coldest I've ever been there seen was 16 degrees out in the middle of the rural areas. And the only worst thing is usually get frost. But they haven't had a snowstorm since 1989. But the worst thing, they had a snowstorm once when they had the 1899 worst cold spell in the United States. Usually Tallahassee was -2 below zero. And in the middle part of the Florida between Lake City and Lake Butler, the deepest snow they ever got was at least about 4 inches. But I actually went through the snowstorm back in '89 in North Carolina. We had 20 inches of snow during that time. It was like -5 back then. The snowstorm event of '89, I went through it back then when I was 9.
Yeah, I know some of the worst weather that we get into around here is up there in Wyoming. Get some horrible weather up there, Rock Springs area. I've lived through many storms up there.
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah, I've been to Rock Springs. Back when I traveled there, they have a lot of wind up there. I actually seen videos on the interstate up there, like I-80. Usually they have the worst snowstorms in there. I've seen videos of blizzards on it. I don't usually go out in the blizzards half the time. I wait till they go on and pass on where they are.
No, I don't like driving in them either.
Well, the blizzard is more like what it is. Snowstorm's like a tropical storm and a hurricane, but without that, they don't have destruction or damage, like when they throw objects. Because I went through a Category 5 a long time ago, and I've been through plenty of hurricanes and tropical storms. Like I went through Francis, and when the state of Florida had the 4 hurricanes hit the whole state, but I lived in a mobile home during the time on a farm, and we had like microburst winds that knocked down one oak tree. They were actually probably impossible tornadoes. I stayed in a shelter for 3 days once, and they were putting me under skylights during a tornado drill. It was not very cool, but after that, when my dad worked with the phone company, he took us to the main building of the CO, where the safest building in Lake City where it was. So we stayed there for these 3 days. So we didn't hear no wind or anyway, but we had a lot of flooding back then.
Okay, that sounds like that would be the safest way to do it.
Yeah, the only worst part I've seen in Utah is just most of the snowstorms. The only thing I don't like when it happens when the power goes out, that's usually happened, but that's why I got to get a battery, one of the 12-volt batteries for this base station one of these days in case I can talk to you through these things that happen. So the longest power outage we have here, it was like 3 or 4 years ago. It was out for like 4 hours during the month of November back then when a cold snap actually happened.
have that many power outages around here. They're pretty well prepared for that.
So yeah, if you ever checked out that frequency I gave to you, just let me know what you think of those trivia questions. The last time I heard those people on the radio, they were talking about oysters and all that stuff. And usually we'll go on for these 2 hours to an hour and a half. And they usually have it on Thursday nights when these call nets over near the Pacific net over near Oregon, I think it was. And you'll be able to hear them when they hit all the frequencies in that area. Then after about the 2 hours, you'll hear individuals when they talk.
Yeah, I'll let you know.
At least my base station is actually working. If you ever get a radio with an upper lower sideband, let me know. Maybe we can try to do some tests on it. I'll probably have to get a mobile rig for upper sideband, lower sideband. Probably an older radio. They have them on eBay pretty cheap. I have to try to look around for one. And I'm probably going to get an amplifier for this radio soon when I have a chance. Maybe I could try to talk to those guys on channel 6 or someone pretty far distance. But I think the upper sideband actually can talk skip too.
Better than great channels.
So you're going to be out there tomorrow night at this time?
Very possibly. I don't sleep much, so I spend a lot of time by my radio.
Pretty cool. At least you're out there anytime. Do you also have like time zones on your thing? I actually set my thing to universal time on one of my clocks. We're actually like 6 hours behind universal time, GM time. Some people do that, but it's all the time zones in the world. I actually have like in my radio room here, I actually have an amateur radio map. It's a 2017 I got. It was a 2018. You can buy them for like $20 during on that time. And also I have like one of these world maps. It's a real display one, and it's like a military design, but you can buy them on Amazon. But they're a date back in 1992. But the time zone's a little off, but they're pretty well detailed paper map. It's pretty nice to have one of these.
Yeah, that probably would be. My little hole in the wall is just a little hole in the wall, not much in it. I've got an iPad that I use for television, and that's about it. I have my reloading stuff in here, but not a whole lot.
Yeah, sometimes the internet can go down, so I have Comcast on my internet too. It's pretty quite good. I only don't like their cable service. The cable service is fine, but the internet service is pretty quite better. Has better connections. You can watch videos. You can look up almost about anything from any previous date timeline from the 60s and 50s. I've seen a lot of videos what the schools look like, even from the 80s in my generation. I try to learn a lot of stuff. Have you ever heard a lot of TV shows back in the 90s and 80s? Have you actually seen some of them?
Oh yeah, that's a lot of it.
I'm going to tell you a really good show that came out in the 1980s and 90s. And I think it was one of the best shows, if you ever heard from it. But the places look like that here in Utah, a lot of suburbs, neighborhoods. You ever recall a show called The Wonder Years? That ran from 1988 to 1993.
I've heard of it.
It's actually about a guy named Kevin Arnold and Winnie Cooper. A guy named Kevin Arnold actually lived during the Vietnam War era, and they went through the schools back in the 60s and 70s. They had all the styles. This show was perfect on everything. A lot of 80s kids actually watched this back then. And there was a girl named Winnie Cooper about her brother got killed in Vietnam.
Okay. I usually watch sitcoms, All in the Family and Barney Miller and such.
Oh yeah, I know that means. Look up The Wonder Years. You might be able to remember it. But it was actually filmed in Burbank, California. That's where the film was actually filmed back then. But a lot of movies were filmed in Burbank, like Back to the Future and other things like that. You ever heard a guy called Fred Savage, the actor?
Affirmative.
He also did a movie called Little Monsters back in '86. It was actually like a Monster Incorporated movie before Monsters Incorporated ever came out.
Okay, yeah, I'm familiar with him.
Mostly the longest TV show I've seen so far, the cartoon called The Simpsons. I remember when it first came out in '89, and it's still been going on to this day, man.
I never really cared for that program.
Yeah, it was not all that great back then, but there was actually better shows like dinosaurs back in the '80s. Like there was like a baby type dinosaur, but it was actually came out in '89 when it was a family show. But TV was better back about 15 years ago when shows were pretty quite good.
Yeah. I also like watching the old time movies, you know, when people actually had to act. They didn't have AD to cover up their mistakes.
Oh, outtakes, I know what that means.
Give me a good old bogey or a Cagney movie anytime.
Yeah, I actually went to the movies during this week for my birthday. I actually went to see the new Han Solo movie. It was pretty good. It was okay. I still like the old Star Wars movie better, but they found out like how they met the Wookiee, how they found him. It's actually about a movie how Han Solo started out with his career before he got the Millennium Fountain and all those things.
Okay. Sounds like something that I would just wait till it comes out on cable.
Yeah, it should be coming out cable. I actually go down to that movie down in Ogden, like the $6 theater one. It's out by Winco. It's usually they show old movies from the 80s and 90s, and sometimes they actually show the ones that haven't came out on pay-per-view for like 2 weeks later.
Yeah, I know where you're talking.
So my radio still sound quite good on the radio still?
Hey, you still got a lot of background.
How about right there? Does that sound better?
I tuned in my Delta tune to clean me up a little bit.
Okay. I like Delta Tune's actually like voice lock, I think it is. I have a voice lock on my radio and RF game.
Yeah, it's similar. It does basically the same thing.
Can you still hear me?
That's permanent.
Oh, you sound a lot better now.
Yeah, you got a little bit more on your mic there, so you're coming through a little bit better.
Okay, 10-4. Yeah, I was just figuring out what these knobs are, but the dynamic mic is actually your ampage for your microphone. I'm actually still using the same microphone the previous base station I had before.
Yeah, well, I use the factory mic. That's what I'm looking at.
So you ever heard of a microphone called Superstar DM452? You can look it up on Amazon. They're like $20 microphone, but they have an echo mic and you can turn it up with the knob. They also have different ones like this one. It has little noise toys, but you can actually record your audio things on it too.
Yeah, there's all kinds of mics out there that promise all kinds of features, but you know, I guess it's boiled down to the fact that they're still a microphone.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, this actually is the cheap microphone for like $20 I paid for this microphone. It actually makes it a little bit better on the radio, but if you put a stock mic on it, it might make it a little bit less, but I think it gives it a little like a good voice thing on it with a 9-volt battery that it usually runs on.
Yeah, I've seen those power mics. I don't own one, but I'm quite aware of them.
You ever heard of a microphone called D104s? It looks like a silver microphone. I've seen on YouTube a lot on this microphone. And they take a battery inside of one of these.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, they actually have a lot of chrome finish to these microphones, but it's a very expensive microphone. But sometimes you get them pretty cheap on eBay. I've seen them. Sometimes this base station actually can work with these too. This one actually has a 4-pin mic, but my realistic Navajo radio, the TRC-23, I had an adapter that went into the radio and went into a 4-pin. It actually has like 5-way pins on that one.
Okay.
So does your Radio Shack radio actually has 5 pins on your microphone too?
Well, it varies because I do have one that only has 4 pins. I've got the 5 pin, I got a 6 pin.
They actually can be converted into 4 pins, a lot of them can.
Now, I've got a couple of radios, you know, that have the channel changing built right into the microphone, so they have 6 pins.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, because some of those truckers I hear on the radio today, I was on a mobile rig talking to them on a radio check on channel 19. He was like 4, 5, 6 miles away. I'm on one of these whip antennas, like breaker antennas from the 70s, and I'm running like an old 80s radio from 1987 TRC 418. They were like $100 radios back then, but I got that radio for like $12 for free. And he was actually using some kind of Galaxy 947. Those are actually like $400 radios between $200. They're more high top ends than we are.
Yeah, they're top of the line.
But I've seen some videos on YouTube, and also these radios, like these Galaxies and stuff, like the mobile rigs, some of these truck stop places or CB places, they actually do put amplifiers in them. I seen a guy on YouTube told me about this, and they actually have an amplifier inside of the radio, like 150 watts, and some actually have a lot more for them. But they go pretty costly on some of those radios.
Yeah, they sell Galaxy radios down there at Pilot.
Yeah, I've seen those. Yeah, the Pilot gas station out by where the dump is, out by Ogden. I've been down there about several weeks ago, but last month during June, I was cleaning out some stuff in the house with my family, and we went down there. It's the one with the Denny's down there. I've seen some of the radios, like the Bearcats, and they're a little bit more, but I saw one of those Bearcat radios, and the one with the LED lights. I've seen for like $40 on KSL a few weeks ago, and they were going like for like $180 at the Pilot gas station. And when I've seen the radio, there was nothing wrong with it. I've seen on the pictures of it. It had a cigarette lighter adapter, microphone included, and the thing was worth like $140 to $180, and somebody was selling it for $40 up in Brigham City.
Yeah, you know, you got a bunch of those deals, but they are definitely out there.
Yeah, KSL usually has it good, but I usually look at eBay. A lot of times I look on stuff on eBay, but Amazon usually has all the antennas you can get. Either way, they have all kinds of them you can buy, but those Walmart antennas I actually have for my mobile rig, like the usually for $14, they only get out like about a mile and a half, usually it does.
Yeah, they're also practically impossible to tune.
Yeah, if you have an antenna tuner, they do work with an antenna matcher very quite well, but you can't hardly tune without an antenna matcher with one of these. I tried on one of these older antenna matchers from the 1980s, Sears vintage. You have to do with a screw inside, but I tried it with this Paradymatics on this the Navajo base station I had, and it came out quite good. But also did it on the realistic radio too, on the mobile rig too, also.
Yeah, well, you know, I found that I make my own antennas, and I don't have any problem getting the SWR where I want it.
So what kind of antennas do you usually do? The whips, are they made out of aluminum or steel, like regular fencing you can get?
I usually more like on my dipole. I like using that copper braid wire.
Oh, copper gray wire. Yeah, you can find that at Home Depot, probably some places you can get. I know what it is. It's usually like that long copper wires they use on Wi-Fi antennas, like bioquads almost.
Yeah, it's got about like an 8 wire braid.
Okay, that's a 10-4 on that. So how's still coming out there? Still coming out clear over there?
Yeah, you still got a little bit of static behind you, but you're coming through totally understandable.
Yeah, I can hear you too. You're coming out clear, and you're still statically coming through my speakers. It's probably the ground noise where I live here, because I'm near a power line, but I'm pretty far away from it, a little bit near my house. That's what it is. But it's probably the air conditioner running and the noise in the background, but it doesn't affect this that much because it filters all it out with the RF gain and the noise blinkers on these switches I have. Even the speaker has a noise blinker too on the back of the Cobra S500 speaker.
Yeah,
I think you're drifting off frequency. Hold on a minute. You still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Still there?
10-4.
There we go. I had to tune my voice lock in. Now I can still hear you now.
I haven't gone anywhere.
You still sound loud and clear. Yeah, because this thing